Yeah, I think we have a little video, don't we have? Okay, then not. Good morning to everyone and welcome to VivaTech. Building tech leaders in Europe. That's the ambitious goal of Scale Up Europe, an initiative started by French President Macron. He asked founders and investors all over Europe to discuss the most important hurdles for startups and scale-ups. Yesterday, some of these key players had the honor to present him their results. Now is the time to share them with all of you. I'm very happy to spend the next hours with some of the key figures of the digital industry, and we are going to talk about 21 recommendations and how they work them out. But first of all, I'm happy to welcome you, Cédric O, Minister of State for the Digital Industry and Electronic Communications, to talk about the ideas behind the initiative. So good morning, Minister O.
Good morning.
President Macron started Scale Up Europe in December. And I wonder why now, and why is it the responsibility of the French administration?
Well, at first, there's the horizon of the French presidency of the European Union, which is at the first semester 2022. And there has been an incredible rise in the European tech ecosystem of the past years. But we do think that we need to do more. And we need to work together, administration, investors, entrepreneurs, corporates, in order to design, to work on what should we change, on what issues should we converge to make Europe a real innovation tech hub as a continent and not as many countries. So that's why the President Macron initiated that initiative at the end of year 2020, and we asked hundreds of people from the ecosystem to work in a few working groups with us, with the French administration, with the European Commission. We also worked with the Portuguese presidency that has been initiating a lot of work around the startups ecosystem. We'll be working with the Slovenian presidency. And so we think that if we are able all together, I mean, both from the political side, but also from the ecosystem side, to take a seat and to think about what we want to do and how we want to do it, and what the ecosystem to some extent need in order to do even better, then we think we can build something big.
Right. Let's make a step back. So the French presidency could concentrate on so many things. Why do you think that startup policies should be a primary focus?
Well, if you look at the pandemics, it's quite significant for me that the companies that found the first vaccines, I mean, Moderna and BioNTech, are startups. And I do think that this is embodying the fact that startups is not only small, nice things that you can see and admire. This is something that becomes quite systemic. And so if we want to be able to address all the challenges that our societies, our economies are facing, be it the environmental challenges, the healthcare challenges, and so on and so on, if we want to keep the value here in Europe and not depend only on big American or Chinese tech companies, which are really innovative and well-performing, but we want also to have those ones, we need to be able to make emerge those new champions here in Europe, because those are going to be economical, democratical, but also sovereign assets in the coming years.
Thank you for bringing this up. So the Silicon Valley often serve as the model how to foster startup innovation and so on. So how do you think it's appropriate to follow the model, or does Europe have to develop its own way?
Well, I think that we have to carve on our own way. And I do believe that there is, and this is, I think, something that is shared by the Europeans, but also the European Commission, there is a European way. There is a European way with a balanced approach between innovation and regulation that is based on European value, and we have to carve our own way. Obviously, in terms of innovation, we are a little bit lagging behind. Not a little bit, we are lagging behind compared, for instance, to the US or China. So we have to we have to be able to bridge the gap in terms of innovation, but we are not forced to copy the model. All the more as I do think that after the pandemics, with the environmental challenges, there is a demand even from the entrepreneurs, but also from the employees, to build something more balanced. And I do believe that this is something that we can build here in Europe with our value and with our own model.
Yeah, you're right. I think that's a wonderful idea, how to frame that. So we often hear from the industry what changes they want to have in government. Let's change perspectives. What change would you like to see from the industry, and does this have a place in the process?
Well, I think if there is one thing that we must develop within the industry is diversity. Be it gender diversity or social and cultural diversity. What we are seeing all over Europe is, but also, well, this is all over the tech ecosystem, be it American or European. This is a little bit more of the same to some extent, like white male under 40 and so on and so on. And there was an entrepreneur yesterday at the Élysée Palace at this gathering with the president that who was the CEO of UiPath, I think, who mentioned,
you're right.
who mentioned the fact that both for a sustainability issue, but also for an equality issue, but also for a performance and efficiency issue, we need to be more diverse. And this is, I think, this is one of the main challenges that we're facing. We have to be more innovative. We have to invest in innovation in key critical technologies, but we also have to change the model and make it more diverse.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much for those insights.
Thank you very much.
So now we like to have a closer look at those recommendations, and I'd like to welcome the authors on stage. Thank you so much. We'll talk later on. Have a warm welcome. So I'd like to welcome on stage. Do you find the right place? Take your seat. Okay. So now there we go. So I'd like to welcome on stage Daniel Dienz, the founder of Europe's first Decacon UiPath, and the founders of 3 European unicorns. So Adrien Nussenbaum, the founder and CEO of Mirakl, Jean-Charles Samuelian, the CEO of Ellen, and Hanno Renner, CEO of Personio. With you, we want to dig a little deeper into some of the recommendations in the areas of talents and collaboration between startups and corporates. So, good morning, everyone. And Daniel, I think we should start with you. So before you have had a successful IPO some weeks ago, you started the most valuable European startups in recent years out of Romania. And yeah, many people were astonished by that. So what do you think your success tells us about talent in Europe?
Well, so I mean, we know that we have plenty of talent in Europe, and especially engineering talent. And the fact that we've been able to launch a company from Romania, which is not a friendly place for startups, shows the abundance of talent. But I would like to make a point that talent in a particular region is not enough to make a global company. So we were able to grow so fast because we had the policy to get the best people wherever they are in the world. So our company right now have plenty of people from Tokyo to Singapore to Bucharest to Paris, Munich, London, New York, Seattle. This is the we have to tap somehow into the global pool. And this is why I believe that Europe should be a place to attract a global pool of talent. We cannot rely only on European talent to build the next big companies.
Yeah, so we have a lot of talent, but we can't relax, yeah. So, on the contrary, the growing startup ecosystem has long led to shortage of talent. So, Hanno, I want to know which talents do you search for the most?
Say again?
It's to Hanno. I want to ask him which talents he searched for the most with this company.
We're searching, of course, for all talent across the business, engineering being a key element, though. However, I think the one thing that's the most troubling in Europe today still is talent with experience of going through those growth stages. And that's, I think, where we still today have to hire a lot from the US, from the companies. We have people on the team from Dropbox and from Uber and Salesforce and so on, which we need because they've gone through that growth stage already. But when companies like UiPath and other big companies in Europe have talent that went through that, then we'll have more of that available here in Europe to fund the next round of scale-ups and unicorns.
So one way to increase the talent pool would be to attract more women to the industry. Today there are far more men leading the startup ecosystem, so how we could trigger that change?
So I mean, one, it's about the awareness and the fact that it's not just diversity to increase talent pool, but also to have better and stronger teams. But when it comes to getting more diverse talent, I think one of the recommendations we also laid out in the manifesto is that we want to increase in tech diversity ranking, where startups actually report on their diversity standards and thereby go ahead of some of the old school economies and really prove that attracting more talent makes us more successful and thereby leading the way in terms of diverse teams and therefore more successful companies.
Yeah, I think it's important to have those numbers to concentrate on it, to manage it. So is diversity already a priority in your company?
So luckily from the overall company, we are quite diverse. We're 51-49 in terms of male-female at the moment, but we did have struggles in the past when it came to the leadership team. So when we hired some people in the exec team, and we had 3 open positions, that at least 2 of them had to be female, and we put that also in the brief to the headhunters we worked with and managed to fill that. But yes, it is a big priority and will remain to be to make sure on all levels we have the right levels of diversity.
Yeah, good luck with this. So, Jean-Charles, within Scale Up Europe, you decided to recommend to President Macron to create a fast-track European tech visa. So, what's today's situation and why did you come to that conclusion?
We think, as we said, that the diversity of ideas, profile, makes a huge difference when you build a company. And at Dalle, when we started, among the first 8 employees, 3 were from the US, for example. And what we saw is that convergence of very different profiles made it for us to go faster, expand the talent pool. And when you see the US, you take the CEO of Google, Microsoft, they were employees at those companies, they are from Indian origins, and they came. And how we can do the same in Europe, how we can make sure that the best talents over the world join European companies so that they scale, so we have those talents and the other countries don't have them as well. And that has been fairly complex in Europe because first, every country had a different visa scheme, which made it very complex when you want to be a distributed company. We operate in France, Spain, Belgium, but we have employees in the UK, in Italy, in Germany, in the Netherlands, and it's hard to manage. So that visa could help accelerate. And the second thing is you have a time to market. So you want to attract people very, very fast because every day you lose as a company when you grow very fast is a day of non-productive work. And being able to attract those people in a very quick and easy way will make them come. And I really do believe, and that was a discussion of Scale Up Europe, that people usually go to the frictionless path. And if it's easier to get a visa in France than it is in the US, in Germany or whatever European country, we will have those people that come build company with us, that create that emulation of ideas, knowledge, that is just going to make us stronger. So I think it's really powerful.
So how much time would you need for the whole process to integrate someone from India, for example?
I think when it goes very well, and we had the French tech visa that has been put in place in France for a while now, you can have someone that you sign and that starts within a month, and that I think when it works well, it's kind of magic, especially in France when someone you are someone in France and it takes them 3 months to join, you are happy to hire those foreigners.
Yes, so how would you set up such a tech visa to improve the situation?
I think what is going to be very important is to find fast-track processes that help companies to have the right counterpart at the state level to do that, to be sure that the criteria to have that fast-track visa are very, very clear, and that we don't waste time on useless process back and forth with very different stakeholders, which I think adds complexity. The thing that is going to be important is that it's very well identified in every country and that we have the same process, because we just don't hire in France, we hire everywhere. And that I think is one of the challenge. The second layer we discussed is about when they got their visa, be sure that they can get a bank account, be sure that they can get a house, be sure that they can rent something, and that is also a very hard part.
Yeah, but it sounds as if you had good ideas for how to improve the process. So, and now we come to another area of improvement, the collaboration of startups and corporates. And Daniel, I'd like to come back to you because you got some blue chip customers early on. And the idea of Scale Up Europe is to implement best practices for collaboration across the ecosystem. So could you share with us some of your ideas?
Well, I would like to say that our experience in collaborating with big enterprises, especially from Europe, in the beginning of our startup was quite positive. I attribute a lot of our later success, for instance, to our collaboration with Capgemini. Like 2014, 2015, they help us. We worked with the part of division of them called like Innovation Labs or something. So I believe that many companies would benefit from having this type of innovation labs where they experience new products, work with startups, maybe, you know, promote some of the products to mainstream usage within their company. Of course, to me, it was a struggle. The first time I've seen a procurement licensing agreement, which was like 50 pages long. And I remember back then I was the only lawyer in the company. I'm not a lawyer by profession, but I had to learn.
So why didn't you give up?
Yeah, it's actually, it proved to be a good educational point. So I think this collaboration, it's mostly about the education of both parts. Entrepreneurs will learn something, even dealing with the procurement, with legal documents. Later on my fundraising and, on my discussion, I learned I use quite a lot of these legalese, that I had to go through early days. But I want to make a bit of also, since there is a lot of public sector involved in this discussion, I would like to make a point that the public sector in European Union, it's way more laggard in working with startups than the private sector. So to me, for us, we have a big public sector business in United States, but almost zero in European Union. And we are a European company. So Americans understood that our software makes them more efficient, but Europeans have a bit of a trouble to understand this. So to me, the biggest point that I want to make is the public sector that should open towards startups way more than before.
Yeah, I believe the procurement process is really some of the biggest hurdles. So Adrien, maybe you want to add something, how we can improve that situation.
So I'm going to share a little story. When we started Mirakl 9 years ago, we were a startup, small startup. And my first contract negotiation with a corporate, the guy who was leading procurement, he told me at the beginning of the negotiation, he says, Adrien, one thing I love every morning is to squeeze myself a lemon with hot water. And the reason why I love squeezing lemons is that because even when you think you've squeezed as much as you can, there is still a little bit of juice left. And that's how I started my first negotiation with a big corporate. As a result, maybe you don't know, but today, the spend of large corporates with startups represents 0.1% of their overall spend. So it's ridiculous. And it's ridiculous because innovation, most of the time, lies within startups. I think it's a great idea for startup people and startup founders to go and learn on the other side also, to understand the cultural differences. But you know, today, if you don't change, you die. And I think that for corporates to find ways to better engage in a more respectful way also with startups, it's hard to start a company from zero. It's hard to go in front, negotiate a contract with people who are super experienced at it. It's very important for the future of these businesses. 52% of Fortune 500 companies in the US have disappeared since 2000. So no one can ever think that they have reached the peak and they're never going to disappear. And if you want to change, it starts by working closer with startups in a very respectful and partnering way.
Yeah, I can add there. So I'm a reporter at Handelsblatt, one of the most important business dailies in Germany, or the most important one. And I often meet, big companies, and they tell me how it works when they cooperate with startups, but no one wants to be quoted on that in the journal. So do you know those situations that corporates don't want to talk about the collaboration?
There are obviously situations like that because it still feels risky for a lot of companies to work with startups. But I think beyond that, there is something which is way more important, which is that we have unique, amazing global leaders in Europe. And for companies like me, like Mirakl, we have more than 300 customers in the world. We don't have a single global agreement with a large corporate, even with a French one. Not a single global contract. And there is another thing, which is that innovation is not what we call the POCs, the POC, the famous POC. Like a lot of organizations, they think, oh yeah, we're going to try this. We're going to do a POC. But a POC, in most situations, it's the start of nothing because you understaff it, you underinvest in it, you under-evangelize across your organization, and from the get-go, you don't set yourself up for success. So it's a mindset shift that is also important. And one of the recommendations we have as part of the work we've done, which I think is a great one, is to create this ability for startups and large corporates to trade employees in a temporary way.
Yeah, I wanted to ask you about that. So what do you think about that?
I think it's a great idea. And personally at Mirakl, when we started, we were less than 9 months old, and we were able to have someone from IBM join us as part of our sales teams. And we learned a lot from the maturity of understanding how a sales process goes, for example. There is a lot of immaturity in startups. They often think, hey, we're the best, we're cool, we're new, we're innovative, just listen to us, you're old, aging business. But it's not true. We've not built companies, we've built billion-dollar valued companies, but we've not built companies that have $1 billion in revenues yet. And we got to learn from the companies who have done this also. And I think this idea of facilitating transfers of employees, like it exists already with secondments and stuff like that, it's a great idea.
So Hanno, what about you? Would you invite your customers to work for Personio for some weeks?
Well, I think it's really working with the customers and learning from each other, and there's certainly a lot of things where we learn from the customers to be a better partner, to build better products, but I think there's also ways where they, and oftentimes we actually see we don't work as much with the large enterprises, but with small and mid-sized companies, and for those it's oftentimes the awareness of we want to work with startups to also learn to get some energy. And I've heard a couple of CEOs tell me in the sales process, I also just want to have you help our HR team be more agile and so on. And I agree, I think there's learnings in both directions that can be done, and we've certainly been leveraging them in the past, and we'll continue to do so.
And is there any CEO of any company you would like to change jobs with for 2 or 3 weeks?
Well, I'd love to change jobs with Daniel for a week. No, I think there's a lot of learnings you can do from other companies that are ahead in your journeys, and that's really exciting. And hence, I think that exchange is really, really important. And just going for dinner together and learning is fun, and you learn a lot.
Yeah, then as I understand, you're connecting your customers to learn from each other, isn't it? Daniel, you?
Of course, I think this is quite important. And speaking about to your previous question about the collaboration with big enterprises, that was one of the pillars of our success, to have our early customers speaking about their experience and creating, you know, a movement around it. So yes, we organize quite a lot of workshops. We have, you know, customers, council across all the regions on the world, and we bring them together and they speak about their experience, how they improve, how they deploy their technology. This is a very important way to build an enterprise business, for sure.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And what about you? Would it be more interesting to change jobs with someone of the insurance industry, or really with your customers, so as an InsurTech?
What I've been trying to do since the beginning of Alan is to, when I find an amazing entrepreneur or leader, try to shadow them for a couple of days, just to understand how they work, because I feel people are not really good at expressing what makes them successful, so you want to see it live, and I think it's very interesting. For us, what we love to do is we are health insurance for large very small companies, but also large corporates, and spending time with HRs of the large corporates and thinking about what were your challenges about health during the past couple of years, and how we can just discuss about the future of health is a great way to partner, and we set up groups of people discussing about mental health in the workplace, about prevention in the workplace, and that is very, very fascinating. You learn tons from them.
Yeah, thank you for your insights and thank you for your experiences.
Thank you.
That was very insightful.
Thanks.
And yeah, you can leave the stage to
Thank you.
make place for the other ones. Thank you. Thank you. Hello. We now turn to other areas of improvement. It is investment and deep tech. And I welcome on stage Ronia Belkahia, deal partner at Sweden-headquartered EQT Ventures, and Christian Miele, partner at Headline in Berlin. So there over is Daniel Metzier, founder of the rocket company Isar Aerospace from Munich. And we have Jean-Michel Dalle, managing director at public science and tech incubator Agoranov. And last but not least, Marguerite Bérard, head of French retail banking at BNP Paribas. So thank you all for joining us. First, I think we need to clarify what we are talking about, because there no longer seems to be a problem with money in Europe. So there has been not only many funding rounds in Europe in recent weeks, but huge ones too. When we think about this month only, it was Celonis in Munich, which has raised $1 billion, becoming Germany's first decacorn, and Klarna in Sweden has again raised hundreds of millions and is valued at almost $46 billion now. So I wonder what is missing today to fund the growth of future European tech giants. Ronia.
Hello, everyone. So as a former entrepreneur, I have also to take my investor hat to say also something that I noticed into the market these last 2 years. And it's pretty incredible. The entrepreneurs has the power back. And this is due to a lot of competition. And to be relevant and credible alternative as a European funds, we definitely to show more value to the European entrepreneurs here. As we saw in the last 12 months, a third of the growth investment has been made by European funds. The rest, Asians and US. So I think this competition is super healthy for the sector, and it gives back the power to entrepreneurs. So I also wanted to raise that, even if it's not too conventional, but I think it's important to underline that. And what we could say to help also growth funding in Europe, I will say first, a more playground in Europe, less administrative issue. For example, to move from California to New York or to Texas, it's much more easy than from France to Germany to Italy. So I think this can be a big game changer for European scale-ups.
Thank you. So one recommendation is to leverage the multiplicator effect of public funding at EU level. What do you mean by that? Could you please put that in a nutshell?
Yeah, sure. Good question, actually. This means like €1 in European funding level could lead to €3 into European funding scale-ups. So this can be helped by funds of funds who gather private and public investors. And definitely, we just spoke about the above 100 million rounds. And this could also help European funds to have a landscape here. And also an interesting here, we need like definitely more support into the LPs, less rigidity on the corporation, and more funding for European startups.
Marguerite, do you want to add something? How do you see that from your bank perspective?
Thank you very much. Hi, everyone. I think just to follow up on what Ronia just said about the difficulties we have to have scale-ups in Europe. Well, the first good thing is that if you look at the past years, I think we've made some progress. If you look only at year 2020, we raised in Europe 40 billion euros of investment and financing for startups. So it's a good start. But you're right, we don't have large tech companies. Sometimes they compare Europe to a forest of bonsai that lacks the larger trees. I see two main reasons why it's the case. The first one is we don't have a single European capital market. We are fragmented. We have many smaller capital markets. So when you have an Austrian, a German tech company, or French tech company that's looking for investors, they have difficulties reaching a pool of investors that's large enough if you compare it to their US or Asian competitors. So that's one reason I see why we have difficulties having larger companies. The second reason is that we do have in Europe a set of prudential rules that were built up in the aftermath of the financial crisis, 2008 and 2009. So they apply to banks, they apply to pension funds, to insurance and so on. And they are called, Basel, they are called solvency, they are called, MiFID. And basically, they do not encourage investments in private equity. Basically, European savings are funneled to, government bonds, financing the real estate, but really not enough to financing private equity and fueling the growth of tech companies. So that's, I think, two maybe obstacles and impediments we have to funding larger tech companies compared to other continents.
Yeah, thank you for bringing this up. Christian, you also recommend developing visibility and information on European VC performance. So what effect do you hope will come from this?
I think Marguerite just mentioned this already. So if we really want to get the big asset allocators to allocate into the venture asset class, we just need to make sure that we have transparent data points on the performance of the underlying managers, because otherwise it will be super tough for pension funds or insurance companies or any other institutional investor to have a long view on this asset class. And I think what we should try to avoid is just having some of these institutional investors becoming tourists in the industry, but you want them to stick around and stay on for 10 years and maybe 20 years. And I think this is also what Emmanuel Macron said yesterday in the Élysée Palace, that we need to make sure that, as Marguerite said, like we not only invest the big pockets in fixed income products or real estate with very low returns, we need to make sure we diversify these institutional portfolios.
Yeah, but we have those clusters in the startup industry too. So while some marketplaces and B2B software companies are pursued by investors, many deep tech founders remain empty-handed. And I wonder, why is it so hard for them to raise capital?
I mean, if you look back 20 years ago when the software venture capital space emerged, you would see that the opportunity costs of starting a company are just really, really low, because you could basically start a business with $1 million or something like that, and even less. Now, if you want to build a rocket company, it's obviously more expensive, and until you have your product market fit, it will just take maybe a decade even, and hundreds of millions of euros. So in order to be part of this next wave of entrepreneurship, we should do everything in Europe that we can fund these companies that can generate massive returns. I think Macron said this yesterday too. I mean, just alone the new space segment is going to be $100 billion plus industry in a couple of years from now. So if we want to play a role in that, we should really make sure that we have enough capital available to fund the innovation at this stage where the company needs the money.
Yeah, that really leads us to you, Daniel. Your company is well funded by European venture capital firms. So what would you say, is our funding ecosystem well equipped to support this profile of startups?
I'm not gonna lie, it's not easy to raise funds, especially when you're pre-revenue, pre-product, or sometimes even you don't even know exactly what your product at the end is going to look like, and you'll actually have to have the team to develop all of that, design a rocket. And I think the big challenge there is that a lot of investors, family offices, PEs, they feel a bit scared because they don't understand the tech that's actually going into it. And you can obviously request from every investor to know their rocket science, basically. So the question is, how can we get investors comfortable investing into technology which they might not necessarily understand in the details, but it's really all about then perceiving or seeing the industries which are going to be important. And as Christian just said, we talked a lot about space yesterday with President Macron. And it's an industry which is very, very important for European sovereignty, because at the end, you don't want to link your own house now to an internet providing satellite, where also the entire data is going through an American satellite constellation, maybe a Chinese satellite constellation, and basically we also just lose the control over the technology that we're building. And so in general, over the last few years, I think it's definitely has been getting better, but we need to do way more to actually make sure that the deep tech companies stay in Europe. And I'm guilty of actually thinking, even before founding the company, to going to the US, purely because of one single reason, which was funding. We were not sure, can we even raise 100 million euro pre-revenue in Europe from ideally European investors? And I'm super happy to show also that it does work, but it's not the usual case, I'd say.
And you were so lucky to get 2 or 3 space engineers at your board, did you?
We do actually. So actually, Bill Altan is here among us today as well. One of the earliest employees of SpaceX, and has been a chief engineer for all of the Falcon and Rockets, Dragon and Starlink satellite constellations. And this definitely for us was one of the key drivers. In that case, also an investor bringing in the technological know-how to assess the technologies, such that also other investors, such as, for example, Earlybird or Lakestar, who have not had any experience in the space industry, and they're basically dragged along into this topic and also feel comfort by people who are leading the way and who have already successfully done it before.
Coming to the recommendations of the initiative, you suggest boosting the action and visibility of the EIC by promoting a long-term deep tech roadmap. Could you please explain shortly what the EIC is and what it does?
So the European Innovation Council is really there to make sure that there is, in general, a tech roadmap, that we get the ideas from the universities, from the labs, from the research institutes, actually into the industry. In Europe, we're extremely good at inventing things, at engineering things, but we're not so good yet at actually commercializing it as well. So we'll have to always think about what do we actually do with the technology that we're building in all of our brilliant universities, and what all our PhDs here in Europe are doing. And the AC is one of the instruments on a European level where we can really think, how can we get it into the industry? How can we create startups out of that? How can we create early funds for companies which might not actually be funded by investors because also the timelines are too long? As Christian said, sometimes you have in biotech industry, in the space industry, sometimes in AI, you have very, very long development cycles. And then the question is, I mean, at the end of the day, also funds have to have their returns within a certain time frame. And to really bridge or actually start that entire development, the EIC is really there to make sure that we get these ideas going in the first place until an investor can actually come in and push it to fully commercialize it.
Yeah, and I think, Jean-Michel, that leads to the question of encouraging students to start their own deep tech company. Europe has some of the most renowned universities. How could we leverage this scientific knowledge into successful deep tech startups? I think you have some insights for us.
Well, I also happen to be a professor at the university, so not only do I welcome students at the incubator when they come, and they were instrumental in founding at least 2 of the 5 unicorns that we've incubated over the years, but I also teach them every year. And with respect to students, if I may, money is not enough. We have to provide them with dreams. And with respect to this, I think that deep tech has the potential to convey such dreams that would bring, in a sense, Europe forward in terms of how we envision the future. If you want proof of this, you just look at Elon Musk. I think he's a marketing genius. Of course, he's also an engineering and just an genius entrepreneur, but he's a marketing genius with respect to deep tech, first and foremost. And according to me, we're a bit shy yet in Europe. And of course, I'm very fond of my country, and I'm very happy with the French dream, but I'm not so sure that in 2021, the idea that we should reinvent the French dream would have any meaning. The European dream in itself, that's different, and we have this, but with respect to technology, with respect to deep tech, well, I'm an engineer. We are too many engineers. We don't convey enough dreams to the younger generation yet.
Yeah, maybe the president could become our Elon Musk now. So your incubator, Agoranov, was founded by universities. How can initiatives like yours lay the groundwork for other institutions to embrace the idea of such a collaboration?
Well, I was speaking about dreams, but at the same time, the work we've done is very mundane. And I think that, in a sense, the incubator, it's a bridge or it's a harbor. It's just a place where entrepreneurs and founders can meet and learn together. So this is something that does not glitter. It's something that is, in a sense, not so visible in the ecosystem until it happens that 5 unicorns were born in this place. But I think that we have to endorse the fact that there is kind of a infrastructure with respect to the ecosystems that also the VCs and many other players provide, because they are ecosystem players. So there's a need for such an infrastructure, and I would believe that now most universities around the world have understood that it's important that they contribute, not just them, but that they contribute to the setting up of this infrastructure that surrounds them, provides helps to students, to scientists, to founders. Just whenever they have the dream and come to the idea, then they need help. And this is exactly what we do, nothing more.
Yeah, thank you for sharing these ideas. Marguerite, let's assume the ecosystem gets all that right with attracting new talent, collaborating with corporates, financing the growth of even deep tech companies. There might be still the problem that some of our companies, prefer an IPO in the US. So what can banks like yours do to create a favorable environment for the listing of tech companies?
Okay, it's a very good question. The first thing we can do as a bank is do our homework, i.e. we need to have bankers that are, Daniel mentioned it, we need to have bankers that understand the tech issues, that are trained, that can understand what is a disruptive business model, a new business model, and be comfortable with it. So that's the first thing we do, and it's an investment. I mean, we've been investing for 10 years. We trained more than 100 bankers all over France, if I'm talking only about France. Because it's a long-term relationship and it takes time, but it's really worth it. And I see now we are the partner of 80% of the next 40 in France, of more than 75% of the FT 120. So it's worth the investment. But it's not enough to convince a scale-up to choose Europe to go public instead of the US. What do we need? We need a positive ecosystem. That means educating investors as well, educating asset managers, and that's what equity capital markets or exam teams are meant for. Because once more, it takes a bit of time. We need our own SPACs. So that's what we've done, for instance, with the Accor Corporate SPAC we helped launching. But it's working. I think there is a dynamic that's picking momentum. We mentioned the Believe IPO a few days ago. We know that OVH in France is going public as well after the summer. There are more to come. And going back on what Daniel mentioned, it's really a sovereignty issue. We don't want Europe just to give birth to fintechs. We want, we want tech companies to be able to grow, to thrive in Europe, because it's really a matter of who sets the rules, and it's really worth the investment. So I think we are in the right direction.
Yeah, and I think we could talk about this topic for hours, but now we are out of time. Thank you for your insights.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. So, and we'll conclude now with Minister O for some final thoughts. Ah, there he is. Welcome on stage again. So we've learned so much about the challenges European founders face. Is there something that especially stands out for you?
Well, I think everything that's been discussed is all about convergence and brand. And to some extent, I think that lately we've been really discussing about regulation in Europe, about DSA, DMA, and so on. And I think to some extent that we have to bear in mind that if we want to be those who set the standards, then we have also to rebalance that with innovation. And innovation needs a market, and all of what was mentioned is about strengthening or narrowing the different ecosystem within Europe. We are in competition, which is a good thing, because I do think that competition makes us better. But we need to build that European brand as far as financing is concerned. So the integration of capital market is really needed. And in terms of all that environment that makes the difference.
Yeah, and we have heard about very ambitious goals today. So I wonder, if we meet again in a year, what do you hope will have been implemented already?
Well, I think that an important point that was raised was about talent, and talent and financing, I would say. And this is all the fuel that is making people or companies better than the others. And if we are able to make progress, obviously this is depending on national responsibilities, but if we are able to make progress on tech visa, for instance, at the European scales, or strengthening the capital market, this is something that I think we should not, and we have not to wait for years to do that, and that can make the difference, because we see that the game is to some extent reset after the pandemic, so if we have to move, we have to move now.
And how do you see your personal role in the implementation now?
Personal, I don't know, but there are a lot of digital ministers here.
Yeah.
And I think that there are a lot of priorities after the pandemics as far as reforming the administration is concerned, as far as the healthcare situation. But we have to bear in mind that the Americans have built their power, especially the tech ecosystem, after the 2008 crisis. And so as digital ministers, and that's why we are all here, I think that we must push for that idea that this is now that the competition of today and of the decades to come is shaped. So this is time to act now.
Yeah, and the groundwork has been laid, and now it's time to implement those great ideas. I hope that these next days will offer some inspiration for how to overcome the remaining hurdles. I wish you all a wonderful VivaTech. Thank you for joining us, and stay healthy.